every Wednesday and of course Friday. We're having tea in the European Union right on your public service broadcaster. This is ZNBC Radio 2. Now, we welcome you to this edition on a Friday of tea in the European Union on the breakfast show, and we'll continue talking issues that affect you and I in one way or the other, more especially when we get to the agriculture sector. Remember, this production is brought to you courtesy of the European Union, and on this edition of the program, just like we did on Wednesday, Mr. Mtendere Mphatso is joining me again. Good morning, and it's good to have you on a Friday.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Great. And today we want to, break down a question: how can climate smart agriculture support Zambia in its food security goals? So this is what we'll be focusing on as we go on and discuss. And just a quick reminder to those that didn't join us on Wednesday, Mr. Mtendere Mphatso is a Chief Technical Advisor under the Food and Agriculture Organization, and is currently coordinating the Sustainable Intensification of smallholder farming systems, SIFAZ project in Zambia. Now, yes, last week we had a very fruitful discussion, and those that did not join us on that day, I wouldn't lie to them, they really missed. But
absolutely they did.
But it's good that they're joining us again today.
Sure.
As we continue in our discussion. Maybe just to do them a favor, let's do a quick recap on what SIFAZ is in a nutshell, and how you work with the European Union.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. So SIFAZ, it's a short name for Sustainable Intensification of Smallholder Farming Systems in Zambia. Mm-hmm. It is one of the projects that are funded by the European Union here in Zambia. It is a component of the larger program on the commercialization of smallholder farmers in Zambia. Mm-hmm. This project is implemented by FAO in partnership with the International Institute for Wheat and Maize, CIMIT, and the Ministry of Agriculture, mm-hmm. operating in Zambia in 5 provinces and 27 districts.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, let's now go into the nitty-gritty of our discussion for this particular morning, as we unbundle, the question: how can climate smart agriculture support Zambia in its food security goals? I'd want you to share with our listeners, out there, Mr. Mphatso, on how classic agriculture is different from, your approach, called climate smart agriculture.
Okay. Now, there are 2 things that are critical for us to bear in mind here. Number 1 is, why are we engaged in agriculture in the first place? 2 main factors, or 2 main reasons. That's where we get the food for us to feed the population. Okay. So the first issue is to ensure that we are food secure. When we talk of being food secure, we are talking of there is food available, people can access the food, they can utilize it in a sustainable manner. Meaning that today you have food, tomorrow you don't, no, but you can sustainably access the food. And on the other side, it's where we get the income. For example, those that are engaged in agriculture, that's how they generate agriculture. So that's, income. That's one side of the conversation. The other part, as you can imagine, we are affected by external factors. In order to produce the food, we rely on the climate or on the environment to produce the food or to generate income. Meaning that if there are any factors that are affecting the environment, it also affects how we produce food and how we generate the income accordingly. Mm-hmm. Now, lately, if you have noticed, we are continuously being affected by a number of factors: delayed rainfall, and maybe before I get much into those details, what exactly is climate change, and how do you feel it? Yeah. This is a situation that you may not see it with your eyes, but the simple things that that we can recognize is, for example, the rising in temperatures, as well as the erratic rainfall that we are constantly seeing. Yeah. But behind that, what we don't see is how is agriculture activities affecting the environment. For us to produce, we need land, meaning we have to clear land. By that, we remove forests that contribute to the rainfall. Okay. Secondly, as we open up the soil, we are increasing emissions. We remove that we don't see by our eyes, but that's exactly what affects the the environment. So the key issue is how we balance the two. Produce our food in a manner that we don't damage the environment, but also the environment is able to contribute. So that's the main difference. So the whole, in simple terms, what we are trying to say is, let's produce food, let's produce income in a manner that it is positively affecting the environment. And we are not now, and we, as we talk, where we have already damaged the environment, how do we adapt to those changes? How do we reverse the trends? How do we reduce those negative impacts? That's basically the whole concept of climate smart agriculture.
Great. It's good that you've explained what climate change is and the effects of climate change and how to go about it. But still, one would want to ask you a question. For instance, how is climate smart agriculture a way to challenge climate change in Zambia?
Okay. So as I said, it is important to bear in mind that our agriculture activities that we do directly have an implication on what happens on the environment. So, they end up not only affecting agriculture, but also affecting the wider population. So, as we are talking about those negative impacts, we needed to find ways and the technologies. So, this project of the SIFAZ, as we work with the EU and the government, we have 3 key areas where we are working on. Number one, do we have appropriate technologies that will help us produce more food, income, without, contributing negatively to the environment? That's where we are introducing technologies like agroforestry. How do we reduce external inorganic chemicals into the farming system? That's number one issue. Number two, how do we ensure that these technologies can appropriately be adopted by farmers? Because having the technology is one thing, knowing how and making sure that farmers are following it is another thing. So we work on the second component in how to promote, making sure that the knowledge is there, and also the environment that farmers can practice is maintained. And the last component is on the policy side, the enabling environment. We may have all these, but the policies that we are following may not help us to adopt or practice. So these 3 elements combined are the ones that would help us to challenge the effects or the negative effects from the climate change.
Right, you're listening to T na European Union live on your public service broadcaster ZNBC Radio 2. Remember, we are on every Wednesdays and of course Fridays at 7:30 on this station, having tea na European Union. This particular morning on this Friday, we are unbundling the question: how can climate smart agriculture support Zambia's food security goals? And of course, my guest is Mr. Mtendere Mphatso, who is our Chief Technical Advisor under the Food and Agriculture Organization. He is currently coordinating the Sustainable Intensification of Smallholder Farming Systems, SIFAZ project in Zambia, and the European Union works closely with him on this particular project. How's our tea?
So far, so good.
Great.
I'm happy.
Right. Now, let's continue on this, our final leg of our discussion. Does this new approach, make the process longer and more difficult, for the smallholder farmers? If climate, smart agriculture is the best approach, are you expecting all, Zambian farmers to integrate into this?
Absolutely. Now, here's the issue. when we talk about whether it is long or difficult for smallholder farmers, let's look at what is the alternative.
Yes.
Okay. Currently, we already are having challenges to produce enough for our farmers. We are having challenges with income generation from the agriculture sector. That's the situation that we have. And on top of that, we have the challenges of the environment. The changes to the environment are real. The negative impact of climate change is real, and we are experiencing it. You don't take my word for it. This season is one of the examples of where one would tell you that there was a change. I mean, there is a negative impact because we had a serious delay in the rainfall, and some parts of the country experienced prolonged dry spells.
Yeah.
So that's the situation in which we are. Are we going to stay in this situation, or should we find ways of how we change and live or adapt or maintain our food security goals and the income goals in a manner that we start reversing the trends? So yes, we anticipate that because the food security objective and the income generation is not going to go away. We still need to do that, but we need to be smarter, given that the environment, we are not the only ones in the agriculture sector who require the environment. We need it for our health, and therefore we need to make changes that will help us to maintain our goals as well as improve the alternative. So we anticipate that smallholder farmers and the population in general, we need to be engaged in these smart practices, and no other than projects like SIFAZ that are generating those technologies. And this is the critical part that it needs to be understood. It is not only just because EU, FAO, and the ministry come together. These technologies have got real consequences, and that's what we need to live or to adapt in this environment where we are experiencing these changes.
Right. So could this new approach, also ensure better food security for the country, as a whole?
Absolutely. As I said earlier on, when we talk of food security, we need to be looking at availability, access to that food. It could be available, but we are not able to access it, and the consumption of that food, but in a sustainable manner. If we are putting at risk any of these three aspects, it will make it difficult for us to achieve the food security objective.
Right. When you are done with a cup of tea, I've seen people, shaping the cup in that manner.
Yes.
So I think so. In terms of our discussion, this is the point where I'll ask you, to speak to the smallholder, a farmer out there, on how best, they should, integrate into these systems as our conclusion.
Okay. Thank you very much. Number one, the effects of climate change are real. Number two, our activities in the agriculture sector, they are contributing to the negative impact on the environment, and those have got long-term consequences. Number three, we need to ensure that technologies are available. We do have the technologies. We do have ways and the knowledge that we could mitigate and reverse the trends in what we are doing with regards to the climate or to the environment in general. These technologies are out there. It is critical for smallholder farmers. Staying in where we are will not be help us. We already are there, and we already know what we are. The question remains: do we have to stay in an environment which we know things are not going according to what we want? So I encourage all the farmers out there to take this matter seriously and to take advantage of the projects like SIFAZ and the support that EU and the government are providing to adopt these technologies to reverse or to improve on their food security and income.
Great, Mr. Mphatso. Let me thank you very much for making it to this, other edition of our program.
And thank you for the tea. It was a pleasure having a tea with you.
Great. You're most welcome anytime. Remember that we do have this tea every Wednesday and Fridays at 7:30 on our breakfast show on ZNBC Radio 2. We've been discussing how climate smart agriculture can support Zambia in its food security goals, and my guest this morning has been Mr. Mtendere Mphatso, Chief Technical Advisor under the Food and Agriculture Organization, and currently coordinating the Sustainable Intensification of Smallholder Farming Systems SIFAZ project in Zambia. The European Union works closely with him on this particular project, and let's not forget that he is an agricultural economist by profession and has held various positions under the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. My name is Dennis Ilukena. I invite you to have tea with me again next week at the same time.